Welcome to Bunch Formation, your newest favorite college football show. I am Chris Vannini, and many men wish death upon me.
And Bunch Formation, which is a tough place to try and make a podcast. Chris, I am David Ubben, and I'm sitting in a chair made of skis. So that's cool. Shout out to Denver. You know, Chris, very early on in your career, people tell you as a reporter, take people where they can't go themselves. And longtime listeners of the show know that the Magic Pan crepe stand in the Denver airport is a special place to me. And I'm telling you right now that we wanted to do a show on location. So we flew out to Denver. I'm in the Denver airport. I can literally see the Magic Pan crepe stand. I just got some lunch from the Modern Market next door. I don't think I'm going to be able to get a crepe, but we go all out for this show, Chris. We are on location in the Denver airport.
David is halfway home to Charlotte, coming back from Oregon, James Madison. I am back home in Dallas at my house. I just drove to the Oklahoma-Alabama game. So we've got David for a decent window of time here. He's got a pretty long layover. If he has to bounce out later in the show, we will be all good. But if you're watching on video, you can see David there in the airport. You may hear some loudspeaker overhead. But we wanted to get the show out today for Monday. Appreciate David making the everything work. We got a big show. We got playoff reaction, 4 first-round games to talk about, some early thoughts on the quarterfinals. We're going to have the Group of 5 conversation. There's some news going on outside of college football. There's more bowl games to quiz David on. And David's got a story about a sports bar experience in Oregon. We will get to it at the end of the show if we have time. David had a in-person sports bar experience that was interesting to say the least.
Oh, we'll have time. We'll have time. It's a humanitarian debate, so we'll see.
If we got time at the end, he'll get it in. If not, we will be back middle of the week. Not sure Wednesday or Thursday because Thursday's Christmas, but we're going to try to do a short show midweek. Mailbag. Send us questions. bunchformationpod@gmail.com. We'll try to get to as many as we can, and then we'll do our big quarterfinal preview next Monday. Check out the show notes if you want to jump ahead for anything. We got timestamps in there. Bunch of information on all your social medias. Please leave us a 5-star review. We will read it on the show. Nothing new there. But first, David, we are coming up on the holidays. Mm-hmm. That means people are making New Year's resolutions to exercise more, to get more involved in their communities. And if you're a trainer, if you're a coach, if you're someone who organizes a running club, you need to use Poney. That's Poney, Poney, a new social scheduling app that makes getting your groups together so much easier. They are the newest sponsor of Bunch Formation, and we're a big fan of what they do. So much so that David's having an experience with it now.
Yeah, so my sister informed me last week that she has started using it for family gatherings. I am the youngest of 6 kids. There's a lot of nieces and nephews and grandkids running around. There's a family group chat that has like 117 people in it. And it simplified things to try and start organizing family activities through Poney. So it's already been functional on our end, Chris.
Nice. And it's not just for family and friends. There are 10 million plus organizers in the U.S., and there's no app that it combines advanced scheduling tools with payment collection like Poney does. If you're an organizer, you typically have to juggle texts, Venmos, calendar apps, spreadsheets. Poney puts all of that together in one easy app.
And everybody's dealt with last-minute cancellations. It happens. But it also adds up, meaning 20 to 30% lost revenue for organizers. But Poney has automated wait lists. So if someone drops out, it will automatically add the next person available and shoot them a message to confirm. Trainers spend 10-plus hours a week on administrative work instead of teaching. Poney eliminates that last-minute scramble and automatically keeps an event at capacity.
And your clients don't have to download the app. You can just send them a link with the info, and Poney does the work for them. It's frictionless infrastructure. With Poney, there is no problem. Download Poney today and make organizing effortless. That's Poney, Poney. Real plans with real friends and real clients made easy. Download Poney in the App Store or at letspony.com today. All right, it's time to get into the first round of the college football playoff is in the books. And to do that, we go into the game recaps.
The kids are playing their tail off, and the coaches are screwing it up.
Alabama 34, Oklahoma 24, the game that I was at. And what a game it was. Oklahoma had a 17-0 lead in the second quarter. Alabama didn't have a first down at that point. John Mateer looked healthy. He looked composed. Receivers are making tough catches. And everybody's tweeting that the game's over, that Alabama shouldn't have been in the playoff. I'm sitting next to our good friend Andy Staples, who's already writing up a full column about how Alabama may or may not miss Kalen DeBoer when he leaves. And then suddenly, Alabama starts to come back. A 4th and 2, Alabama scores a touchdown. Then Oklahoma's driving. John Mateer's got Xavier Robinson open down the field. He's also got about 20 yards in front of him to run. He throws it. The pass is dropped. Then Oklahoma punter just kind of drops the ball. Alabama blocks, turns into a field goal. Then Alabama gets a pick six, and suddenly we're tied at halftime in just an unbelievable turn of events. Turnovers and special teams really flipped the game. Bama got up on top in the second half. They win the game by 10. Ty Simpson got better as the game went on. The protection got better. Oklahoma's offense got worse. John Mateer started to look a bit scrambled. A lot going on here, but David, overall, just kind of big picture thoughts. Alabama gets it done on the road. At the time, the first road team to win a playoff game, and they avenge the previous loss to Oklahoma.
Well, this is kind of what happened. I mean, this is who Oklahoma is. Alabama, I don't know who they are. They've looked weird all season long. They haven't been consistent all year. I think people underrated how many guys were out for the SEC championship game for them. I think that matters. The talent with Alabama is obvious, but this is who Oklahoma is. And when you don't have a consistent offense, and you certainly can't run the ball, it's hard to salt away wins. They haven't been able to do that consistently all year. John Mateer has kind of been the only answer for them in the running game. And when you're trying to control a game, that doesn't work. And so sometimes you get a miscommunication and you throw an ugly pick six that swings the game. The punt was weird, obviously. But ultimately, again, when you can't score, your margin for error gets really small.
And I think ultimately Oklahoma did not score more than 21 or didn't score more than 3 offensive touchdowns against a Power 4 team, I think, all year. And what surprised me about this game, though, is that turnovers and special teams were the things that won Oklahoma the first 2 games against Bama the last 2 years. Oklahoma had a 6-1 turnover edge. They had 2 pick sixes. The special teams won them the game. They're making kicks, blocked a kick, all that kind of stuff. And the way this game started out, that was happening again. Tate Sandell makes a 50-something yard field goal in a very windy game. Oklahoma's punting the ball very poorly. Oklahoma's continually got great field position. And then the pick six changes that. Or the punt, then the drop punt happens, then the pick six happens, and suddenly it's all on Alabama. Tate Sandell misses 2 field goals in the fourth quarter. The Lou Groza award-winning kicker, the best kicker in the country, misses 2 field goals while trying to make it a one-possession game. And Alabama had the turnover edge. And then ultimately, what it was, I thought that Alabama outcoached Oklahoma in this game. And that's because Kalen DeBoer is a really, really good coach. For all the talk about Michigan going after him when it was 17-0, people were saying, does Michigan even want him? Like, guys, we need to stop defining Kalen DeBoer by comparing him to Nick Saban. That period is over. Nick Saban is not coming back. That period of domination by anybody is not coming back. It is a new world of college football where you have to appreciate every single win that you can get. And Kalen DeBoer in the biggest games is still maybe the best coach in the country at that. Yes, the SEC championship game didn't go well, but he's now 4-0 on the road against top 10 teams. He's got the most wins in ranked versus ranked games. He's already got 2 wins over Kirby Smart, even though he lost the SEC championship there. Like, they adjusted, and Kane Womack, the defensive coordinator, adjusted. He talked about how they had changed some things up to bait Oklahoma into that pick six. Now, there was a miscommunication there. Mateer signaled something. The receiver didn't get it or whatever. But even if he runs the right route, it's not necessarily a completion. It might have been picked anyway. The defense was there in position. And Alabama had no pass rush in the first half. Suddenly in the second half, they're getting home. They're getting it done there. And protection adjustments, Ty Simpson is getting time in the pocket, and he's finding guys and he's making plays. And Lazier Brooks, wide receiver, freshman at Alabama, 2 touchdowns. Unbelievable. Dave, you've talked about this guy before and what the people at Alabama think of him.
I don't want to go here necessarily, but Lottie Brooks is who people think Ryan Williams is. Like the Ryan Williams production and sort of just going MIA for what seems like this entire season is one of the more confounding college football things. But Lottie Brooks is a guy that showed up at Alabama this year and just immediately made a difference. When you have a special freshman, it's very clear when they come in, in camp and in practice, and he's been that guy. He made a huge catch to help them salt the win and beat Missouri earlier this year. That was kind of one of the big breakthrough moments for him. But down the stretch, you've seen him come through, and this was another situation. It's worth noting, Chris, were you aware now that Kalen DeBoer, I think this group will be growing because the playoff has grown, the first coach to win a playoff game at 2 different schools?
I just saw that earlier today, yeah.
Well, that seems like it's a pretty good coach, And I think the guys like him, guys like Kurt Signetti, we could probably throw Bob Chesney into that group as well. We'll see as things progress. But these guys, I've been beating this drum for several years that coaches who have consistently won at lower levels were an untapped market in the coaching carousel. Winners win. You can Google them or not, but I think you see that. And Kalen DeBoer obviously has a history of that. What he did at Indiana, what he did at Fresno State, obviously flipping Washington in like a year. These are things that are not easy to do. And when you get at a place like Alabama, you can do things like this where they don't play their best game and they beat a pretty good Oklahoma team on the road, on the biggest stage in the sport. Just an unbelievable win for Alabama. And I think a testament that I don't think Alabama fans are probably still going to appreciate what they have in Kalen DeBoer, but they won and their season's still going. So
do you know how impressive it is, by the way, to come back down 17 against a Brent Venables defense?
Yeah.
That is when they put you in a grinder. And our Mason Thomas was getting home early in that game, and Alabama had no answers. And then a couple of plays go their way, and they've got the answers. And it's really just an incredible job by everybody, I think, on that Alabama coaching staff. And to your Ryan Williams point, by the way, 1 catch, 1 pretty bad drop.
Yeah.
He's like wide receiver like 3 or 4.
Well, he's got 10 drops this year now. That's more than anybody in the country. Like I don't know what has happened because he is still a special athlete. Some of the things he can do, and when he gets the ball in his hand, he moves at a different speed than other people, but the drops are huge. The production, I think, is mostly just kind of curious. I don't fully understand why the production has been so down because that can't just be explained by the drops, and he's got a much better quarterback this year in Ty Simpson. But it's weird. I'm really curious what Ryan Williams's reputation is and how he is viewed if that catch against Georgia doesn't happen. If he still goes for like 120 in that game and doesn't have what I still think is probably one of the 3 or 4 best football plays I've seen in the last 5 years or so. Making that catch on the sideline.
I do wonder, like, remember, he took I think it was a big hit and got knocked of like the Florida State game. I think he might have. So he's taken some pretty big hits this year. You just kind of wonder where his headspace is on all of that. But it's still Alabama, folks. They still have guys like Lottie Brooks who will show up there and make the big catches on the deep balls when you need them. I
Jeremy Bernard, who, the old vet, like Jeremy Bernard's been playing football for like 80 years.
Unbelievable.
But that catch was
unbelievable.
Pro throw.
It really was. And Alabama just in the first, quarter and a half of that game, Oklahoma was making those catches. Deion Burks making a diving catch, foot tapping down on the sideline.
Good to see him back, by the way. He's electric.
Yeah. And then in the second half, Oklahoma just didn't make those plays, and Alabama did. There were a number of really bad drops from both teams in this game. Like, it wasn't the best played game, but you could see it there in spurts. I thought the environment from being there, the environment was awesome.
It looked great. I mean, there's just so much more. Like, this is the college football playoff is what it is, Chris, and the NFL situation is what it is as well. But the games are so much more special at night, and I wish that we could move it to like a late afternoon, like a 4 o'clock and an 8 o'clock, and then a 4 o'clock and an 8 o'clock because, we'll get to Texas A&M and Miami, but like that game playing at 11 a.m. local, Johnny Football wasn't the only one that was probably disappointed that the game was that early. Like the fact that you had to put your best game that early because of the exclusive window is kind of not great. But that environment looked unbelievable because these playoff games, when you get to the night games, it's just different.
And we've been a little critical of Oklahoma home environment at times in terms of it kind of not a lot of artificial stuff and all that kind of stuff. Not artificial noise, but like just it feels like a pro environment sometimes. That place was locked and loaded, whole game, everybody standing, loud as heck. It got silent when Alabama makes the comeback. Like we get a drone show at halftime, and the crowd is really quiet because they can't believe what just happened. But that's understandable. And then 50 Cent comes out at the end of the third quarter and a surprise appearance.
That's so good.
For people who don't know, Oklahoma had kind of adopted Many Men as its fourth quarter song, like this year, I'm pretty sure. And
like
so
mid-season, and they've embraced the hard to kill. First of all, the hard to kill hoodies, awesome. They gotta like it fits this team so well because this team is not that good and people don't like watching them and they refuse to die. So like it embraced this year's team. So I don't know if it's gonna work in 2, 3, 4 years, but I loved them. Bob Stoops was rocking it. 50 Cent was rocking it. And I think too, Chris, like this is one thing that I think is a gap between the SEC and the Big Ten is it feels like a lot of times these SEC schools just put more into making the game, especially at night, like an experience and something that you've never seen before. And I don't think you see as much of that in the Big Ten. Oklahoma, obviously the 50 Cent thing, the laser show, like Tennessee does the dark mode game. Alabama, like if you've been to Alabama games, like at night, they do all kinds of stuff with like the stadium ribbon and like the flashing, like the wristbands and things. And like,
I had not, by the way,
it adds a lot.
I had not seen that at previous Oklahoma games I'd been to. So like they took it up another huge level for this game. The Sooner Schooner has lights on the undercarriage. Like a car, like when it's there's
Fast
lights flashing underneath it. Yeah, exactly. So there was that going on, but I thought it was a great environment. 50 Cent comes out, the microphone. I don't know what they showed on the broadcast, but like the microphone was not working great, and he wasn't putting necessarily the most effort into it. He's kind of just talking, so it was a little bit awkward. And at the time, because Alabama was still up 10, Alabama players were kind of more into it. But then, first 2 plays coming out of the break. Deep ball, pass interference, deep ball touchdown. 50 Cent changes the momentum in that game. It seemed like until
if they won that game, they would have had to put a 50 Cent statue in Heisman Park.
Yeah.
If you have not been, first of all, it's awesome that Oklahoma has a Heisman Park. I believe they have 7 Heisman winners. That's
correct. Yep.
More than everybody except Ohio State or USC. I forget.
USC.
But it's a literal park where there's just statues of their 7 Heisman winners, and it's kind of incredible to see.
And for all the commenters who say I just look like Baker Mayfield, I went and checked out the statue just to make sure. So real quick, Oklahoma now. Well, before we look ahead at Alabama, Indiana briefly, Oklahoma looking back at the season. 10-3, some big wins against a really difficult schedule. I think you have to feel good about the season as a whole, especially when you thought you might come into the year with Brent Venables
6-6 and Venables gone. Yeah,
they got an identity. They leaned into that. You've got a front office set, like you're recruiting better again. You've got scouting, all this kind of stuff there. So like it's a step forward on the season. But man, you had a 17-0 lead at home, and you didn't get it done. That's really going to stick in your craw for a while.
Who's hard to kill is the question now.
Here, quick question: do you think Alabama? Do you think Oklahoma blew it or Alabama took it?
That's a tough question. It was definitely a little bit of both. I mean, the punt thing is like blowing it. The pick.
The pick is
miscommunication. I don't know. Miscommunications happen. I mean, if you're making a late check because you see something, some of that is the defense playing well. I don't know, but ultimately, I think when you look at this game, we joked about hard to kill, but Alabama, just the floor is so high with them because man for man, pound for pound, up with literally anybody. And this Alabama team's not great. We know that. They haven't been playing great for most of the back half of the season, but they're pretty tough. They need to be more physical than they were against Georgia earlier. Offensively, they're not that physical. Defensively, they're still pretty, Deontay Lawson, they need to get LT Overton back healthy, but they're still pretty physical. I like their DBs. The receiving group as a whole is pretty good, but they just have so much talent that you can never really count them out. And I think it looks different when you're going against Georgia, who is the most talented team. I think the talent rankings are Georgia, Ohio State, Bama. I think it might be Bama too.
So
something like that. They're just
like
they're tough to beat.
On the Oklahoma side, moving forward, I think your offensive line, which was a big problem this year, and it's been a big problem for a couple of years now, your offensive line should be better because
Bill Bedenbaugh.
You were starting. Well, he's one of the best offensive line coaches, but he has not gotten the job done the last couple of years. But
it's weird.
This offensive line had 3 freshmen on it. Like, just player, development, it should be better. You have to be able to run the ball. That has to be your whole offseason goal is. And I don't know if that means you make an offensive line coach change or not, but you have to get that right. I think the offensive line will be better. John Mateer, see the guy? Like, I don't really think you could go elsewhere. And it's hard to say how
good.
much.
I don't know about the guy, but he's good enough to commit to at least another year. I mean, like, I was downplaying the Mateer thing all off season because I watched him a lot at Washington State, and I was like, he's fun but limited. You know who he is. Like, you can build an offense around him. He can make plays for you.
And the thumb injury.
Don't drop it back and make him throw 40 times a year. And yeah, the thumb thing was a factor. And like, if he has a full offseason where he's healthy and doesn't get hurt next year, maybe things look a little different. He did have a lot more zip on his ball in this game.
He did. He needs to be better playing in structure. It's so much of what he does is scramble and make something happen. And you need some. And so you need to find some more offensive weapons, maybe to get around him in the portal. But you went and got Jaden Ott, and that turned out to be nothing. So I don't know if there's
healthy scratch, right?
I don't know if there's a disconnect between that new front office and GM and the coach or what, but you guys got to get on the same page and know what you need and if you guys can go get it. I think, they're set up back. You make the playoff, you do this kind of stuff. It really sucks that you blew it the way you did. I still think this is a team I would expect going into next year. I think there's very much room to improve, and I think they can, and I think they will. So I think you can still be pretty good moving forward. As for the Rose Bowl, Alabama, Indiana, they have never played before.
Really?
Indiana's about a touchdown favorite. Indiana's a touchdown favorite over Alabama. My early thoughts on this, I do wonder if the injury to Stephen Daly, how much of a factor that will play. That is one of the best pass rushers in the country for Indiana, who got hurt either during or after the Big Ten championship game in celebration, and he's out. Very curious how difficult that will change things. But across the board, Indiana's better at most positions, I would say. Despite the team talent level and all that kind of stuff, this is a team that is very fundamentally sound. You don't have the big swings. You've got the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. You've got a good group of receivers. Early thoughts on this? Alabama got a chance, or what do you think?
I mean, I'm excited for the narrative here that we're going to get this game because, Oklahoma, if they get to this game, Oklahoma's in the SEC, Chris, but they're not SEC, right? And Alabama is the SEC incarnate. It's them in Georgia, LSU when they're cooking, and so Indiana, people respect them a lot more this year because of what they've done on the field, frankly.
People who have paid attention do. I don't know if casual people quite understand how different
there's
this Indiana
still,
team is.
I think, especially in the South, there's a lot of side-eyeing Indiana of is this legit? And I think that is going to be really, really interesting. Because there's a world in which Indiana just smacks Bama. That can happen. If it's 31-10, that's a real thing. But also, talent is talent, and Alabama can win this game too. I'm really excited to see this game. I think it's going to be one of those that I could see going a number of directions. But it's the narrative Super Bowl. We don't see a lot of these SEC Big Ten high stakes matchups very often. And so when you have two teams that appear, this is the SEC runner up and the Big Ten champion going head to head, and a Big Ten champion that I think a lot of people, like I said, in the South specifically don't respect. So there's going to be a lot of chest huffing on the line in this game. I think that to me is pretty interesting. And the fact that you have Kurt Cignetti, who obviously has spent time at Alabama, that helped, build his career. And then Kalen DeBoer, before this was a huge part of the best Indiana seasons that we've seen. I covered their last game that year in the Gator Bowl. They lost to Tennessee late.
Kick was
close
good.
Game. Yeah, but that was a really fun Indiana team. What was the quarterback's name on it? Peyton Ramsey. Michael Penix was on it. He got hurt, but yeah, that was a good Indiana team. That maybe was a little bit of smoke and mirrors, but had a good coordinator there. So I think that part of it is interesting. But to me, it's a North-South narrative Super Bowl, I think.
I could see Indiana winning this game going away. I
Yep.
could also see Alabama winning it. Like, does that last 2.5 quarters, did that wake something up in Alabama that we haven't seen in a month and a half? Like, do they have momentum? Which, by the way, coming off the field there at Oklahoma, they were handing out roses to everybody. Ty Simpson's got a rose in his mouth, as much as Dave doesn't care. It's again what we talked about in the last episode. The Rose Bowl, just that imagery. Like, give somebody a rose. That's good. Like, I don't think there were Orange Bowl people handing out oranges to the winner of Oregon JMU, unless I missed it. But anyway, I think that should be a really, really interesting game. Cool moment.
Can we get the Sugar Bowl people just pelting people with sugar cubes? Can we get that?
Cool moment down the field at Oklahoma. When we go down onto the field, usually I'm like, all right, I'm going to follow the quarterback or the head coach and just kind of get some imagery here and see what's going on. And Ty Simpson, after he does his ESPN interview, runs off the field trying to catch up to Kalen DeBoer, yells out KD. He sees him. He gives the ball to Kalen DeBoer and says, "This is yours." And they give a big hug. And that's just, I think, a really cool moment. And I think you've seen some of the people within Alabama trying to rally behind Kalen DeBoer and let him know that he is appreciated. Nick Saban did it in the pregame on there as well. So, and also, we go, after that happens, we go to the visitor locker room, which is like in the Sooner Vision TV area, and you can just hear blaring from the Alabama locker room going back to Cali by
yeah, that's nice. That's great. So I feel like Many Men would have been the only thing that might have been funnier. But going back to Cali, that's a strong pick.
So a player in Alabama had said, like, Alabama apparently plays that song as well on Fridays. Like, I don't know if it's at practice or locker room or what, but so Alabama got hyped up by that too. So anyway, good game, exciting game, fun comeback. Alabama, Indiana, I cannot wait for it. Miami 10.
Was there a possibility that somebody could find 50, slip him a check for like $20K and have him do like a private concert in the locker room? That's the ultimate indignity, I think.
I was thinking they needed to bring him back out for every drive or something. It was funny because he was going too long, and the refs had to like tell him to get off the field when that was going on. It was funny. Miami 10, Texas A&M 3. Miami wins its biggest game since the 2001 national championship. Maybe this was 0-0.
I want to say no, but I think that's right. I think that's correct.
This was 0-0 at halftime. Bunch of missed field goals, extremely windy. But in the end, Miami finds a running game. Mark Fletcher, 17 carries, 172 yards, 10 yards per carry, including a big 50-yarder to set up the touchdown. Blake Toney, great freshman wide receiver for Miami. Mm-hmm. They tried to force the ball into a lot. It wasn't really working. He trips on the punt return. That would have been a touchdown. I don't think the A&M guy got him. I think he tripped over his own feet. That leads to a missed field goal. He has a fumble in the fourth quarter. Then he's in tears on the sideline afterward. But Miami forces the punt. Then he takes the kind of end around tip pass for a touchdown late. We can talk about whether or not they should have gone out of bounds, but Miami gets the interception in the end zone to win the game. Ugly game, but like a dramatic game. Like I had a lot of fun watching this, because it wasn't like bad football. These were two very good defenses and very good defensive fronts owning the game the way that they wanted to. I had a lot of fun with this.
Yeah, I mean, you sort of hit on it. Like just because the kickers are screwing it up, that doesn't really have that much bearing on the game. Like, the game was physical. I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was sort of like, what did you expect? That's kind of maybe not that low scoring, but that's kind of what I thought it was going to be. Extremely physical, extremely hard to get anything going. There's some explosion in these two offenses. You look at the A&M receivers, all that stuff. But these defensive fronts were going to control this game.
Miami has not been
Malachi Toney has been.
That's
I know, but Malachi Toney can break one. And Mark
Yeah.
Fletcher finally healthy. Obviously, he can break one. We'll talk more about him later. But this is one of those that I think you play this game 100 times, feels like it's 50-50. I do feel for A&M because you can talk about whether or not this. Go ahead.
We'll talk about their season at the end of
Mm-hmm.
this. We'll talk about whether or not it's a good season. But in terms of the game, like
Mm-hmm.
it's a tough way to go out. And
Yeah,
what Miami was doing defensively was very much, we're going to make Marcel Reed beat us with his arm. Like we're going to pressure, but we're not going to all out pressure and overcommit. And then Marcel Reed's got a lane to make a big run. He had a couple of those early on, but then then Miami kind of tightened that up. And it was like, all right, you're going to have to throw to beat us. And Texas A&M couldn't do it. He threw 2 interceptions. He threw, I think he played 10 or 11 games against Power 4 opponents in Notre Dame this year. He threw, I think, 12 or 13 interceptions in those games, including multiple interceptions in 4 of the last 5 games against Power 4 competition. And Ruben Bain was just dominant in this game. 3 sacks. Now, we remember the Texas A&M offensive lineman who had basically said Miami's nothing special, that defensive front and all that stuff. We find out after the game, Ruben Bain had a picture of that guy on his phone background, and he showed everybody in the press conference. He was also on Instagram Live saying kind of F Texas A&M and kind of that stuff too, which, look, you win, talk your stuff. I don't think I would broadcast that to the world.
Well,
but
I think
but
it is interesting to
it.
me. It is interesting to me that for all intents and purposes, going on Instagram Live is basically the same thing as a press conference, but there seems to be like a dichotomy between like athletes, in that setting versus like a press. I don't know why they don't see that it's the same thing. It's all being broadcast to the world because, like, obviously he would never say that in a press conference, but we've seen this like a handful of times this year where guys are just like literally going on Instagram Live, cutting a diss track on the team that they just beat, and they'll go out to the press conference, but it's a great team. We're blessed to win the game. It's like it's like, dude, like just whatever you're gonna do it. And I think that part is funny. But yeah, Ruben Bain, if there was a defensive player, outside of Texas Tech that was close to getting in the Heisman conversation, he was it. I thought that was weird. The Texas A&M lineman. I think he maybe didn't think about how he was saying or how what he was saying would be received. But but don't hit the hornet's nest. And Ruben Bain is just one guy that you just would not want to provoke, and he seemed provoked, but blocks the field goal, just consistently disruptive. I think he had a sack on the last drive to slow them down. And just Marcel Reed, man, like he took a step this year. I think he's a good player. I think obviously A&M, you got to rally around him, continue to help him grow. But man, the inconsistency is a killer. And I do think, I think this ties into the conversation about their season, but because of how crazy easy their SEC schedule was, you do kind of have to reassess the Marcel Reed conversation. He's in the midst of the Heisman conversation in late November. Your Marcel mode. I got the package from A&M.
Yeah, I got it here. The Texas A&M sent these big packages out. I got it. I think I got it the day before or the day after the Texas game when I got home.
Yeah, I got mine like the Tuesday after the Texas game, I think, because I was gone for Thanksgiving. So not the greatest timing, but you got to back your people. But he's got to take more steps because the consistency is big. The decision making is big. Valuing the football is big. It seemed like the bad plays would come in bunches. He'd make one and then he'd start pressing, and that, you say cornerbacks have to have a short memory. Like quarterbacks, I think, have to have a short memory as well, and he doesn't seem to have that right now.
So on Miami, I think I want to credit Mario Cristobal here. That he didn't coach a perfect game. I didn't think his timeout management and clock management at the end of the first half was good.
Yeah, that was brutal.
But I think he knew what kind of game he was in, and he wanted his team to avoid the big back-breaking mistakes, and they did. They just missed some field goals in the middle of it, and admittedly a very difficult situation. I mean, that Texas A&M student on College Game Day, by the way, he would have made that kick if not for the wind, right? I think we can safely say that kick for $1 million.
Yeah, it sounds like from the people that I talked to, it seems like the wind was pretty crazy at A&M. It didn't necessarily always look like it during the game, but then like they'd line up for a kick and you see the flags are going. Like I don't think it read on TV as much as it was on the field.
And that impacts the passing game too. Like both of these teams were not airing it out deep, in part because of protection, but also in part because that was going to be a very difficult thing to do. And so Miami, Carson Beck, I think was like 14 for 20. Like they played it safe with him. They didn't say, Carson Beck, we're going to ride you to win this game. And I think that's credit to Mario Cristobal. I thought the play calling with Shannon Dawson was a bit mixed. Like they clearly were trying to get it to Tony, and Texas A&M was clearly geared in on Tony. But then they also realized, like, hey, and our colleague Manny Navarro said, I think at halftime, like, give Mark Fletcher the ball more. He's
I don't know why does Mark Fletcher not have 25 to 30 carries in this kind of game where it's physical? You got a big back, it's windy, you can't throw the ball. Like the fact that he only got 17 carries, and I think how many of those were in the second half? Like 10, maybe.
Right.
Like he should have been pushing 25, 30. This was the game with all that's at stake. With the conditions, like you needed to feed him more than maybe he could even handle in a single game because you have to.
And if you've got that Mark Fletcher, like this was the Miami team that we thought, 2-3 weeks into the season might be the most complete team in the country. Now I no longer feel that extent, but this is why we said, when I said going in, like, could either of these teams win it all? And you were a little hesitant, but you were like, yes. And I think this Miami team is dangerous. And if they're able to run the ball like that now, and they play as well in the trenches as they did in this game, that is a team that can cause problems for a lot of people. We'll talk about the Ohio State matchup in a minute, but Miami won this game the way I think Mario Cristobal wants to win games, and I think that was good. Did you see Michael Irvin on the sideline?
Yes, incredible. I love Michael Irvin. We need more of Michael Irvin. I don't know, like he was doing this at Cal last year, and he was doing it at least one game this year. The instinct to go on all fours, a canine type position when the game gets tight, I don't understand that instinct at all. Maybe it's just because he's a dog. And
that's it. That's what it is. I can feel that. Like you have this emotion and you don't want to like let it go. You're on the sideline with a bunch of people around you. Like you got to just be in your zone, get down on the ground and just like focus in on what you're doing. He's pushing all his energy to the Canes to make a play. And they did.
So I don't fully understand it, but I respect it. And I will say, if you're Miami, I think you got to think about saying, hey, Sebastian the Ibis, thank you for all that you've done for this university, but we're going to need you to step aside. Our new mascot is Michael Irvin, and just have him at all the games. I think you got to seriously think about that. I think people would embrace it. It's the representative for the school. So shout out to the playmaker.
Okay. Texas A&M, how good of a season was this? You finished 11-2. You were 11-0 and ranked number 3 in the country.
Mm-hmm.
But you lose to Texas again. You lose a home playoff game to Miami. It's the second year in a row this team fell apart down the stretch. The schedule turned out to be pretty favorable, though you did get the win at Notre Dame, which was aided by a dropped extra point, but you won it at Notre Dame. Mike Elko's got the new big contract. I think we all agree he's a very good coach. But for all the A&M fans who all the talk about trying to not have like battered Aggie syndrome and all this kind of stuff, we thought that they had gotten past that. But the way the season finishes, you're like, oh, you got my hopes up and fell short again, which is the whole thing. So like, I mean, good season. It's their best season since 94 or longer. But man, the way the season ended.
It's their third best season since they joined the SEC, Chris. Here's why. You look at that 2012 season, and they were playing as well as anybody at the end of the season. It's very easy to say, man, what if we had the playoff? What if
the Manziel
season? They were red hot. They were scorching teams. The spread, people in the SEC hadn't really adjusted. And that, I think, is probably the number 2 best season. The COVID season, they get rocked by Alabama, but they go 9-1. They were playing really good football at the end there with Jimbo. They don't make the playoff, but they go and win the Orange Bowl. I think it's easier to say, what if, when you have some truly great teams, and you're going to remember those teams more fondly than this team, which didn't, other than the Notre Dame win, didn't really have like a crowning achievement. and then
it was the
lose to your
comeback. It was the comeback against South Carolina. That was the most memorable thing.
Yeah. So
Which is
the
which
best
I'm
day
saying.
of your season. So like the best memory of your season was the first half that like was the worst day of your life. So that's a problem. And you lose to Texas to keep you out of Atlanta for the first time. And you still haven't beaten Texas since 2011,
I think
2010.
so.
You've lost 3 in a row now to them. And then you have a home playoff game. You acquit yourself, but you lose in pretty painful fashion. That pick, that's one that I think just ripped their hearts out. So to me, when you think about the legacy of these seasons, that 11-0, I think, is a distant memory. And I think, too, even the most diehard Aggie would recognize, like, the schedule. They got a little lucky in terms of just who they drew this year and all those wins against the bottom half of the SEC. And it ended in such a way that I think this is the third best season they've had since they joined the SEC. I'd put 2020 at number 1A, 2012 at 1B, and I think this is a pretty
the Manziel is bigger because the Alabama won the Heisman Trophy.
Yeah, they broke through. I think they gained a lot of respect. So I'll put that.
It's fair. I do think you end the season a lot of frustration. I want to go back to one thing because that reminded me when I was talking about Mario Cristobal and game management. The decision to run the end around, the pass end around. People saying Tony should have gone out at the 1 yard line. They should have waited, kicked the field goal as time expires because they're out of timeouts, I think. I disagreed with that. I think score the touchdown because in a game in which you haven't allowed a touchdown, I'm going to trust my defense in that spot. Now, it turned out Texas A&M put together its best drive of the game and got all the way down inside the 5 yard line, but you make the interception because you can't trust Marcel Reed to necessarily take you all 100 yards. Ari Wasserman, some other people saying, no, kick the field goal. I disagree because you've already missed 3 field goals in that game. You know, like the wind is terrible. Something could get blocked. I understand it. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying in the context of this game, I think getting the touchdown was better. Now, I'm not going to say Miami went for the touchdown because it was still basically a run play. They didn't just hand it off to Fletcher up the middle and kick, but it was a call that was designed to potentially get you a touchdown, but very well might not have either. It wasn't a pass, but on the decision to go out or not, I think ultimately it worked out. I agreed with the call. What do you think?
2 things here. One, I think people are missing a lot of context. Okay, one, the things that you pointed out of just the game flow, take the points, but it's not like late in the game where it's like 4th and 1 and you have a back that breaks it and then he's running and he can like look at the sideline and figure out what he wants to do. That play was happening fast and you're just playing football at that point. And I don't think that's not a situation where before the play you're having a conversation of, hey, if you get the first down, go down. I don't think that ever came up on the sidelines. If you watch it, it was a close play. You're just playing football. And Malachi Tony's a young player as well. You're just not thinking that. It's been so uphill. And I think the feeling in that moment is if we score a touchdown, this game is over. It wasn't necessarily the case, but because of the way that game has played out, it did feel like that won the game. Now there's a lot of time left, obviously, but the wind, the way your defense had played, I get the argument to try and kick it, but just think with all the context, game flow, the actual play that you're talking about, it's just not a realistic thing to do. And I think from the numbers perspective, probably the numbers play is probably the score there.
Miami, Ohio State, Cotton Bowl. I will be there on New Year's Eve night. So quick early thoughts on this. We'll do the big preview next week. I think there's a chance Ohio State wins this game big.
Yeah,
but
possible.
I haven't seen Ohio State's offense tear apart a really good defense this year. You know, they struggled against Indiana. They struggled against Texas. I know that was Julian Sands' first start, but like, it's not like Ohio State's out here putting 50 on, top 20 defenses every week. The schedule has not been great either. Some fun storylines with Jeremiah Smith, a bunch of Miami kids who Brian Hartline recruited out of Florida to come to Ohio State, now playing Miami. That'll be kind of cool. This is not the first time they've played since that 2002 title game. They did play a couple times in the late 2000s. Remember that was the game Joe Bauserman went like 2 for 14, and that image of Joe Bauserman's like passing chart when it's like all over. That's where that came from. That Ohio State quarterback back in the day, for people who remember. I think there's a chance this could be Miami uglies this up and wins. I think Ohio State wins. I think I don't exactly know what they're favored by. Probably like 4 or 5 points or something like that. But there's a chance this could be a good game.
We just haven't seen enough of Ohio State in high leverage situations. Like you talk about the Texas game, but as close as that was, they felt like they were in control of that game the whole time. Like watching that, I was like, Texas is not winning this football game. It just never felt like they were very seriously threatening. Indiana.
By the way, hold on.
Game,
Ohio State 9.5 point favorite.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I think to me, I think it's gonna be low scoring, but I'm curious. Like, do we learn a little bit about this Ohio State team and its toughness? Because you lose the game to Indiana. Miami's better than Texas. This is the second best team you've played all season long. The Big Ten was kind of pillowy soft in the middle, and so I'm really intrigued to see this. And I think it's gonna be a fun game. Miami can win it. But I think the under is something I'm keeping an eye on for this game for sure.
Ole Miss 41, Tulane 10. A game that was 14-0 within like 7 Ole Miss plays, but then it settled in for the next like 2 quarters, and Tulane was right there even with them. Tulane moved the ball well. They had almost 200 yards of offense, less than halfway through the second quarter. But they just couldn't finish drives. There was interception on the first drive, a couple of 4th down stops. They drove into Ole Miss territory 8 times, only scored 10 points, including a garbage touchdown at the end. Only had 1 3-and-out. So it's not like, they didn't show anything. They did. They just couldn't really kind of get it going. It ultimately became kind of what the first game was. Trinidad Chambliss is tremendous. 282 passing yards, 3 total touchdowns. He did leave the game once after his head slammed on the turf. Kawan Lacey, 87 yards on 15 carries. He left the game twice with what looked like a shoulder, maybe a collarbone thing. Couldn't quite tell. So Ole Miss got a bit banged up in this game, but ultimately did what we expected, took care of business, kept Tulane at arm's length the whole time, and then pulled away in the end. And we'll hold off on the group of 5 conversation until after the JMU stuff, but just specific to Ole Miss Tulane, David, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy how similar the 2 games were, where it's like, if you didn't watch the game and you don't really respect Tulane, it's easy to just be like, you lost by 30 points. And the same thing happened in the first game, where it's like, it's a lopsided score, but it just like was not quite that as lopsided as it seemed. So, that's something to think about. But, ultimately, they didn't do a whole lot to quell the narrative about the G5. It is what it is, but I think the scene in Oxford looked cool, and people can be embracing Pete Golding. If this is the Pete Golding pressers that we're going to be getting for the entirety of the Pete, give him a lifetime contract. God bless him. Like I have to wonder in the offseason if I'm not sure who reps him, but I wonder if they're going to tell him like, you can't be that honest all the time. It's like some guys that's their brand, but he seems to have no filter, which I appreciate because you learn a lot and you get a sense of what's really going on in the program. But you wonder if there's a reason why some of these coaches are more muted, but I appreciated the honesty. He's talking about Charlie White, about all this stuff they had to prove and all this, super interesting.
Yes, except for, there was one word he said that you shouldn't be saying that I think he probably won't next time. But he made the point
you're referring to.
I did too until our colleague Grace Rayner told me. Also, Dave, your video is frozen right now, so I don't know if you just want to turn your camera off and on or whatever. But
we're back. Listen, I will say, shout out to the Denver airport Wi-Fi because we weren't sure. It's been holding it down mostly, so we're doing okay.
It is. I mean, we'll at least while we're recording. I guess I'll see how it looks, afterward. But we're fine. But Golding, he made the point. He's like, Charlie Weiss Jr. had to keep hearing Lane Kiffin's offense. Lane Kiffin's not calling the plays. Charlie Ross Jr. is. And so he was motivated. Now Charlie Ross Jr. is going to LSU.
Yeah, that seems like an issue.
So
that it was an odd choice to stand on the table for a coach that's leaving, but to each their own.
But also, like, this is why you had to promote Pete Golding to the job, because this Ole Miss may never get back here again. And you have to do everything you can to keep as much continuity as you can without the clear frustration and insulting of Lane Kiffin being. If Lane Kiffin's on the sideline, everybody's booing him. It's going to make for a very weird scene. Yet you had to do it this way. Lane Kiffin, by the way, he got a $250,000 bonus for that Ole Miss win, because his LSU contract will pay him whatever bonuses he would have gotten if he stayed with Ole Miss. LSU's paying him that. So he just made an extra $250K for Pete Golding going out there and winning the game. I think for Ole Miss moving forward, like, offense looked good as you would expect. I would be concerned about Lacey's health. What is his situation after getting banged up?
Yeah.
For all the talk, Bud Elliott was saying about safety issue and stuff with the G5 and whatnot. Dude, Ole Miss and Tulane had players dropping like every other play. These dudes were hitting each other really hard. And so Ole Miss, people saying like, oh, the 5 and 6 seed just got a bye to the next round. No, they didn't. Go ask that Ole Miss team if they're, oh yeah, we're fine after that. No, they had guys dropping. That's supposed to be what happens when you play a game instead of getting a bye. You get banged up. What is Lacey's health? I don't know. Defense, I think, is still an issue. Tulane, like we said, was able to move the ball in spurts. So there's that. Tulane's let's do the Tulane retrospective now. Great season, 4 straight years going to conference championship. You do see today coaches and players going into the portal, coaches going to Florida. You are going to have to rebuild. Will Hall will be your next head coach, promoted from pass game coordinator. Kind of mixed feelings on him because the Southern Miss run wasn't very good. But Tulane's a much better job, first of all. Like, there is money there, roster to get new players. He'll have to do that. He's been at Tulane twice. He knows the place. I can understand the concerns, but if you're going to promote a guy from within, I understand it's him. Head coaching experience, like, there's stuff you can do with there. I do not think we have to see what the Tulane roster is. I don't think this team is going to fall to the backside. I think it's pretty clear in the American now. Like, Memphis, Tulane, USF are spending more than everybody else in the conference by a lot. They will continue to be near the top. Navy will as well, because they're Navy, and that's just what they do. Army potentially as well. So I don't think Tulane falls off very far. Plus, you got coaching changes at those other schools anyway. So you're all kind of in the same boat. I think Tulane will be fine. Good 2-year run with John Summerall. See what it is moving forward. Georgia, Ole Miss, quick thoughts. A rematch. Dave, what do you think?
This is where I wonder about the coaching mismatch. Just preparing. Kirby Smart's been in these games a lot. Pete Golding has not, as just a head coach overseeing everything. I wonder about maybe getting a little overhyped for this game and guys losing focus. So I think this could be an interesting test. Georgia, Ole Miss controlled that game early on, but Georgia outplayed them, down the stretch to win it. So it's going to be a really interesting test for them. I think it's probably going to be a similar type of game. But I think we're going to learn a lot more about Pete Golding as a head coach in that game. There's probably going to be some in-game coaching decisions that he didn't have to make against Tulane. Obviously, the talent gap, they're going to be playing uphill a little bit. I think they can win it, but I think you're going to need to have a really well-coached game from Pete Golding. So that to me is the most interesting thing is the coaching matchup in this one and what that prep looks like.
Yeah. Georgia is about a 6.5-point favorite. The last game, Ole Miss was scoring every single drive. Georgia was matching every single drive until the fourth quarter. They shut them down and Georgia wins. I think Georgia's going to do the same thing. I think they're going to be able to run all over this Ole Miss defense, which has really struggled. Can the offense keep up? I think they'll score, but I think Georgia pulls away. We'll have a deeper talk about it next week, but that'll be interesting. Oregon 51, James Madison 34. David, you were there. Oregon scored touchdowns on their first, I think, 5 drives. It was 48-13 in the third quarter, and Oregon pulled a lot of its defensive starters. Yes, the offensive guys stayed in, but defensively they very much pulled back. But JMU kept playing hard. They rallied, eventually score a touchdown with a minute left, and cover the 20.5-point spread in the end. So credit to them for that. Oregon, though, overall, averaged 7.5 yards per carry. They could have, they could have won this game by a lot more if they had kept going. They obviously didn't want to. But also, JMU played well, and the defensive concerns maybe at Oregon are a little bit there. Dante Moore, 19 for 29, 313 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, notably.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with Oregon, they were supposedly healthier, but DeCorian Moore had 1 catch. Gary Bryant Jr. didn't have a catch. I don't think Evan Stewart played. So guys who we thought might be ready really weren't as ready. Before we get to JMU, just kind of overall thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, the receiver group is kind of the top of that list in terms of health. And I think the most important for them. It does beg the question of as a 20-point favorite, how much do you want to push that, especially the way that the game started? Yeah. How many times do you want to throw to DeCorian Moore in traffic? What does that look like with trying to get Evan Stewart some run? Do you want to do that? So it's hard to say, but I think ultimately when you looked at these two teams, Oregon, to me, this is not as good of a defensive front as they had a season ago, and you saw that on display. They protected better than I think they thought they were going to. Even Bob Chesney after the game was talking about, hey, we thought that was going to be an issue, and it wasn't. But to me, they did have some success running the ball, but I thought Oregon took away the right things from that game. They seemed to be the angriest playoff winning team in the history of the college football playoff, and that's probably the right attitude.
Yep. JMU ultimately finishes with 509 yards, 23 first downs. They scored 28 plus points, I think, in the fourth quarter there. Pretty good turnout from the JMU fans, it sounded like. A couple of people said, hey, JMU fans, for a road game across the country, they showed up. And I'm glad that they got something to...
The JMU section was full. It was loud.
And I'm glad they got something to cheer for, because I've seen so many games where it's a blowout and the two teams are not on the same level, but that other team scores 3 points and you just never had a moment to enjoy it. I'm glad at least JMU kind of got something to cheer about, but in terms of them putting up that many points, that many yards, it was 48-13. Do you read much into that for Oregon or no?
I'll say no, because a lot of it was the backups, and also JMU. I mean, they were pulling out all the stops in the playbook.
Double pass, fake punt, Philly special. It was all. They left it all out. The credit to them.
The first touchdown was a missed tackle on the edge that allowed DeGennaro to break free, and he threw the deep pass. Also, former. I think he's a former college quarterback. He's been playing for a while. So, it'd be one thing if they're just going up and down the field and 6-yard run, 8-yard run. I'd be more concerned if that was happening. But it's not what you want. I understand Dan Lanning being furious after that game and the players being frustrated with the performance as well. But ultimately, I think to win a game in the playoff and be angry about it and have the amount of talent that you have, that probably serves Oregon well in the big picture.
I think there's part there. JMU went out in a way that its fans can be pleased with, played hard, gave it all you got.
Mm-hmm.
Just what you got wasn't enough to actually keep the game competitive. Overall, before we get into the group of 5 conversation, David, how was the environment overall?
It was awesome, man. They also had a drone show that was pretty cool. We've discussed on the podcast. I don't really get the Grateful Dead, but there was some Grateful Dead mixed in there. Listen, I might be the most pro drone show person out there. Just a big fan. They're just generally very cool. I have not tired of them yet. I will say using the drone show to make fake fireworks feels a little pointless to me. It feels like you could just use actual fireworks, but far be it from me to nitpick the drones. But a very cool environment. Just from watching it on TV all weekend and then obviously going to one, I really do think that the best thing the sport could do for itself and to emphasize the regular season would be just embrace. People talk about though the college football is becoming more like the NFL, it's becoming more like the FCS, and they should lean into that and play all these games on campus up until the national championship game. I don't like switching to the bowls for quarterfinals. I think we're going to lose a little bit of something, and then obviously attendance is an issue in these games. I don't think there's any reason to believe that it's going to be any different than it was last year. I think you're going to see, I got to look at these matchups and the geography, but I'd say you're probably going to get half-empty stadiums at some of these.
No, I don't think half-empty. I don't think half-empty. But
dude,
maybe
Texas
not.
Arizona
Maybe
State was bad last year in Atlanta. The point is, you're asking fans to pay for tickets, pay for travel. There's not a lot of people that are happy to be in the quarters. You're dreaming bigger. The quarters are always going to be the toughest sell, I think, for people.
Yeah.
Indiana and the Rose Bowl might be an exception. But some of these, man, it's a tough ask for fans to go to a quarterfinal.
So the Group of 5 conversation here. I'm going to start off with acknowledging, yes, it's bad that there were 2 Group of 5 teams in this playoff, and both of them weren't really that competitive of games, that they were blowouts. I think it's a tough thing to look at. It's a tough thing to watch. That's not good. But I do think we need to keep one spot for the Group of 5, which will be the case moving forward, because I don't need the playoff field to be only who people believe are the top teams, because I don't believe the playoff is the most important thing in college football. To me, that is the regular season. It is better if all the teams start the season with a reachable goal. That includes a conference championship, and that includes making the college football playoff. I don't think negating half of FBS, 60-plus teams, also
67.
One single playoff game might be more competitive if we put in a different team with at least 2 losses, because we saw last year the first round was all blowouts, and there were no Group of 5 teams in there either. And I think a lot of the problems with this year's thing are not going to be there anymore. We are not going to have 2 Group of 5 teams in the playoff anymore. The reason we did this year is because of the ACC's stupid tiebreakers that didn't have Miami go to the ACC championship game. Had that happened, JMU wouldn't have been in, Notre Dame would have been in, and frankly, I don't think we would have had very much complaining about any of this. Group of 5 team versus BYU or Texas or Vandy, I don't think there's really that much of an argument to make. This really comes down to people being upset about one single game that they wish was more competitive, and they think taking the Group of 5 out will just make that competitive. There's a better chance it could be competitive, but it's college football. We get blowouts all the time. And next year, we move into the new playoff contract, and I believe the new memorandum of understanding, which guarantees a spot for Notre Dame if they're in the top 12, also guarantees a spot for the top Power 4 conference champions. So in that case, JMU would have been out. Duke would have been in, I guess, something like that. So a lot of the issues this year, which are, I understand why people saw those games, 2 of them blowouts, and hate that. I completely agree with you on that. But I don't think most of these problems will be there moving forward. And I don't think it's worth blowing up half of FBS just for one single game. It's good that North Texas and Navy and Tulane and James Madison were playing these games in November with a lot of stakes, that we talked about them here on the podcast. A lot of people watched them because there was going to be playoff implications. I think it's okay to get one spot in it. The leader of the NFC South division is 7-7 right now and is probably going to host a playoff game like in the NFL. This just happens sometimes. I don't think it needs to be the top teams. Give them one spot, which they are moving forward. That's my first part of it. David, you wrote a column about this as well.
Yeah. So the arithmetic you sort of laid out is we want to make 67 teams regular season. That's 12 games each. My quick math, that's like 700 games. We want to make those basically irrelevant so that we might get one more competitive game and allow a team that probably doesn't deserve to play for a national championship a chance to do that. It's like, listen, I respect what BYU did. Notre Dame, we can throw them in there.
But again, Notre Dame was a weird spot for 2 Group of 5s. It's not going to happen. Notre Dame doesn't have to worry about that moving forward.
But my point is, Alonzo Barnett said the same thing, said this after the game last night, JMU's quarterback. He said, most of those Power 4 teams that didn't make it, they controlled their destiny. And they drove their destiny into the ditch. And so you're asking for the committee to give you a break. JMU didn't really control their destiny. They needed a lot of stars to align to get there, so they weren't going to apologize for being there. And I agree. I think the 2 Group of 5 teams was an anomaly. It was a weird thing. But I think the simplest way to fix this is you just install something that says, hey, you got to be, whether it's top 20, maybe it's top 10. I wouldn't prefer top 10, but top 16 makes a lot of sense if the playoff expands to 16 to get in the field. So that if there is a year where, this year was a little bit complicated because I think the American had 3 really good teams at the top, but they just kind of beat each other up. But when there's a year where there just is not a great Group of 5 team and the best Group of 5 team has like 2 losses or something, it didn't beat a P4 team like that, if they don't get in, then I don't think people will be complaining about that. But just I think putting that in, I don't necessarily trust the committee. That makes me nervous. But having something that allows that hey, because like JMU, by all the rules, they should have been in. But I don't think anybody would have been crying for them if they didn't get in. But that's the system that we have, and it's built around, obviously, the death of the Pac-12 has impacted this. The oversized conference has affected this. All of these things point back to all the broken things in the sport. And so then you get this outcome in the playoff. Everybody wants to do all these things to the playoff, ban the G5, do all these things. And it's like, this is not really a problem. It's a college football problem.
Yeah, I would also say, like, you want to have, like, upward mobility for people. Like, TCU had to fight to make it in. And then they eventually got up to the Power 4 and they went and played for the national championship. Utah had to move its way up. But several of these teams have moved their ways up into a spot where suddenly they are there. Like Indiana was only a Power 5 team forever, just simply because it happened to be in the Big Ten. Like, it was not a team that was really competitive for most of its history. And then, whoops, the rules change, you adapt to the change, and suddenly you're here. These things change all the time. Like, Tulane voluntarily left the SEC 60 years ago. If they had just stayed in, they're a Power 4 team. Like that. So in terms of like what these programs are and how they get here, I think people kind of need to remember that as well. And I disagree with the threshold part of it, because most years we've always had at least one top 25 Group of 5 team. This Tulane team was ranked number 20 and they beat the ACC champion. Like, that's a pretty good case to be in. Last year, Boise State was a top 10 team and they lost to Oregon on a last second field goal on the road. So like, in 4 years ago, Tulane beat top 10 USC and Caleb Williams in the Cotton Bowl. So it's like, it's not like we have this long history of Group of 5 teams getting blown out in these spots and there's all this kind of data to go. The data is pretty much the other way. And ultimately it comes down to, I think the regular season is the most important thing to me. Those 14 weeks, that's a bigger deal to me than the 4 to 6 weeks of the playoff to me. Now, it may not be the case to everybody, but I think if you start doing things where it's like, some people say it should just be the top 12 teams, that's better for the sport. It's not better for this. It's not better for the sport, because if you do that, most of these teams will never make it. And then eventually you just want a super league. You just want 20 teams maybe. And then eventually, maybe you just want the SEC and Big Ten. It's like, well, maybe we don't need Purdue in there either. You just want to see Alabama and Michigan, Ohio State and Texas play each other all the time. And that's all. That's the road you start going down if the playoff is the most important thing to you and who gets into it, because you're going to get back to only a handful of teams end up being ranked in the top 12. And I don't think that's ultimately better. You want conference races to matter, conference championships, however you want to determine them. So you're playing for more. John Summerall said after the game, like, this team, we raised a trophy. We raised the American Conference Championship. They'll bring us back in 40 years to celebrate this team, regardless of what happened here in the playoff. And I think that's very true, and I think that's good. And I would disagree with the people who very patronizingly say that there should be a Group of 5 playoff, because almost nobody in the Group of 5 wants that. It would give them less relevance, less money, and permanently put them to second place status and make that much more difficult to make that upward mobility. All the people saying, oh, the Group of 5 should do this, they'd love it. They don't want it. The fans don't want it. They like the ability that they can go to the playoff now, that Tulane can sell out all of its playoff gear because it got there. This isn't the BCS where 2 teams were there. You had to sue to get your way in. This isn't the 4-team playoff. There's 12 teams. enough good teams are in the playoff now that I don't feel bad that the team that lost 2 or more games missed out. The team that missed out last year, remember, was the Alabama team with 3 losses that lost to 2 6-6 teams. Okay. I don't need to kick out a group of 5 team so that Alabama team can get in.
That Alabama team, it should be noted, full strength, got smacked by Michigan in the bowl game.
We've only done this for 2 years. We do not have enough data to determine what is what. I think people need to relax. I think people can be upset that both of the games last night were boring. I agree with you. But that is not going to be the case moving forward. And I don't think it's worth blowing up the regular season over it. That's my last bit. Do you have anything?
No. I just think that sometimes I think that protecting the regular season is really important. And I think sometimes in these playoff conversations, there's a lot of reflexive ideas that lose sight of that. And I think that when we talk about protecting that G5 spot, people act like it's like some kind of charity thing or like the closest thing to like woke college football. It's like, no, I just think that all 136 seasons should matter.
And look,
and they do right now.
Look, in Miami just beat a team that was ranked number 3 and was atop the SEC. So like schedules are such that we don't necessarily know who's the best teams anymore. All right.
Yeah.
Moving on elsewhere, we still got a bit to get to. In the FCS, Montana State beats Montana 48-23. First time they've ever met in the playoffs, semifinal game. Really cool environment. Awesome scene. It was 20-3 Montana State. Montana rallies to take the lead. Montana State storms back and wins. Over $600 per ticket to get in. Very cool scene there. And in the other semifinal, Illinois State beats Villanova 30-14. Illinois State, the first team to win 4 straight road games to get to the championship in the FCS. They also upset North Dakota State earlier on.
That was a wild game.
Both of them were pretty cool, pretty great. Any thoughts there?
I watched a little bit of the I like them calling it the Super Brawl, the Brawl of the Wild.
Which is actually a corporate name. It's like Cat Grizz or Grizz Cat is what they call it, but Brawl of the Wild is cooler. I would lean into it.
Yeah. Great game. Really back and forth. Very entertaining. I had it on second screen while I was watching the second half of the it wasn't a bowl game, just Ole Miss Tulane. I was trying to remember what the bowl was. And I was like, oh, it's not a bowl. So yeah, enjoyed this game.
Division II, Ferris State beats Harding 42-21. I have a soft spot for Ferris State because they're from the great state of Michigan, like myself. But also, we use their high school hockey logo, or their logo as my high school hockey logo when I was playing. Ferris State's now won 4 titles in 5 years, 30 straight games. You might remember Trinidad Chambliss was the quarterback for them last year. It was kind of funny that they were both playing at the same time. Have to wonder. Trinidad Chambliss maybe regrets making that move, right?
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
Division III, Wisconsin River Falls will face North Central in the championship in January. River Falls beat Johns Hopkins 48-41. I wrote about this team earlier in the season. Their offense is incredible. They're averaging 560 yards per game. They had 20 straight losing seasons until they promoted Joe Matheson to offensive coordinator. Really cool for them. River Falls going to the Stag Bowl. Okay. Now we're going to talk about a couple of bits of news here while I'm actively losing my voice, it seems. But to do that, we go into the media scrum.
That's why I don't read the newspaper. Because it's garbage.
Kenny Dillingham is staying at Arizona State. It was announced Saturday morning. What's that?
I said, no, really?
Yeah, I woke up to this because I had to sleep in because I got home at 4 a.m. from Oklahoma. Long story. But Kenny Dillingham says he's getting a raise and increased staff pool. But there was a good quote from him. He spoke to media as well. And he says this, quote, "We need to find one of these really rich people in this city to step up and stroke a check, and I'll do everything I can to make them the most famous person in the city. We live in Phoenix, Arizona. You're telling me there's not one person who can stroke a $20 million check right now? There's somebody out here who can. Somebody can step up and completely take this place from the direction it's going to. Holy cow." And that gets back to what I was saying this whole time with Dillingham and what he was doing, this and that. Like, he needs more money for players and staff, and he got part of that. But that is the ultimate thing. Like, yes, he's from there. Yes, it's his dream job. But, you know, he was a play away from going to the semifinals last year. You know, has a tough injury filled season this year, and now Sam Levitt's gone to the portal. Like, he wants to take Arizona State to that highest level, and it's not going to happen unless you invest. And for all the talk about Kurt Cignetti in Indiana, what he's done there, Indiana also invested when they hired Kurt Cignetti and paid up to get players and coaches and all this stuff. So credit to Kenny Dillingham for being extremely honest about everything. But, I don't think he was not offered the Michigan job yet to that point. But as it relates to his future and whatnot, that's what he's going for. That's what all these coaches are going for.
Yeah, I mean, good luck finding a rich person. I saw somebody was pitching the idea I should call up Mr. Beast and have him do it and make some content out of it. We'll see. I mean, I think part of it is you just got to keep winning and keep growing that. He's talked since he got the job about activating the Valley and all those things. It does seem to be a sleeping giant, but it's easier said than done. And you have a lot of transplants there. Similar environment like in Nashville, some of these other places, it's hard to get people really going. But I think if you can, and I think he believes this, that the ceiling is really, really high for that program because Phoenix is Phoenix.
But he's now in a conference where he's competing with Cody Campbell and that Texas Tech roster.
That doesn't help. That doesn't help.
And Crumble Cookies at BYU and the entire Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So like that is even within the Big 12, that's in competition. He knows he needs to get there. In terms of Michigan and where they go from here, it's unclear. Like, we knew they were going to make a push for Kalen DeBoer and probably will still try to, but Kalen DeBoer is now going to be playing on New Year's Day. And I think Alabama's tried to make it pretty clear that they want to keep him and will do that as such. So if you take those two guys out, Jed Fish doesn't really seem to have much momentum there. There's talk now of like Biff Poggi being the interim like bridge coach. You have people in the program saying that, and like that is bad. You cannot do that. You're a program.
You're Michigan. You can't have bridge coaches.
No, you are competing.
It's
for
not
national,
July. It's January.
You are competing for national championships every year. Your offensive coordinator is on his way out. Chip Lindsey to Missouri. You have a really good freshman quarterback. You need to get pieces around him. Like, you will see. Like, Packers offensive coordinator Adam Stenovich, I think, wants the job. He's a former Michigan player. But that's difficult with the NFL and the calendar and all that stuff. So it's still very possible that Michigan makes a shock hire from somebody we didn't see coming. It's always possible that can happen because it's Michigan. But,
yeah,
we don't know if that AD Ward Manuel is going to be there very much longer because there's an investigation into the athletic department going on within the school. So very tough situation. And, I kept saying they weren't going to rush it, but now you're starting to kind of wonder what are the options here. It's starting to get a bit foggier. A couple other details. Ohio coach Brian Smith fired. We talked about it last week. And then after the episode came out, some more details that we obtained. My colleagues, Justin Williams and Matt Baker. He had a relationship with an undergraduate student and somebody else.
Not in the program, it should be noted.
Not different than Sharon Moore. He maintains he was already separated from his wife. Divorce proceedings were ongoing. There's no rules against it. He's saying he shouldn't be fired for cause, which means you get none of your buyout money. School also claims some alcohol stuff. A little bit unsure. There may be a legal fight out of this, but kind of a really shocking thing for somebody, led this team to 8-4 this season. He'd been there for a while. So Ohio job is open as well. And
not a lawyer, but it seems like he's got a decent case. We'll see.
We'll see. In terms of the for cause firing, if you want to fire him because you don't think he should do various things, okay, but
yeah,
different than the Sharon Moore situation. Couple quarterbacks in the portal, David. I figured we would grade them on the 1 to 5 as we did last time. Rocco Becht out of Iowa State in the portal. What do you think?
I'll go 4.5 for him. Know who he is. Well, you know who he is, and I think what does he look like with better talent around him?
Yeah.
If you're going to end up at Penn State and not Iowa State, I think that raises your ceiling a little bit. I like his consistency. I think he's a good player. I think you can have that through line if he does end up at Penn State, like some people seem to think he is, that I think that can help you establish a foundation if you're Matt Campbell there. So I think he can have a really, really nice year. I'd say a 4.5. I'm a big Rocco Becht fan. Good player.
I'll go 4, but I think I'd put him behind Mestemaker, Levitt, maybe Sorsby, I think, as well.
Well, there's not a lot. The thing is, there's not a lot of upside necessarily, and like he's not the most talented guy, but he's like a good player, consistent. His head is going to be in the right place. He's played so much football, so I think that to me, like when you go in the portal, especially for quarterbacks, there's so much risk that you're taking on because it has to hit. It's very hard for me to see a situation where he goes somewhere and is just not good. He'll be at least good and maybe really good.
And the OC, Tyler Mauser, went to Penn State as well. So maybe that's where he ends up. We'll see. It's kind of weird with the portal not being open. We kind of have like a couple of weeks here where we technically can say, well, where could he go? When that may be where he goes. Josh Hoover is leaving TCU. The offensive coordinator changed there as well. This one surprised me a little bit, but then I talked to our friend Sam Kahn, and he was not as surprised. Hoover put up some big numbers, big touchdowns and yards, but also a lot of interceptions. I don't think the offense under Ken Braz was good for him, but he's a possibility for Indiana. I think people said he was once committed to Indiana before TCU, but I believe that was a different coaching staff. But I think Indiana's a place you want to go if you're a quarterback based on what's happened with Curtis Rourke and that. But in terms of Josh Hoover, I'll put him at a 3-star.
Yeah, I'll go 3.5. I like the tools. Production, decision-making probably needs to be a little bit better. I was a little surprised that he left just because, Tennessee seemed to be kicking the tires on him after the spring and he would have come and played the same offense and it didn't seem like he had any interest. So a little surprised.
And TCU hired Gordon Sammies, I always forgot to say his name, as offense coordinator. He did a really good job. Remember, the quarterback at UConn had really good numbers, but this might be a bit more of a run the ball team than they've been the last couple of years. So it'd be interesting. We'll go into the coaching carousel more in a future episode and kind of what it all means for everybody.
Yeah. Kendall Browse at South Carolina, by the way.
Yeah, okay, Shane Beamer, I guess. Beau Pribula, right? Pribula. I always say it wrong. Is that right? Pribula.
I believe it's Pribula.
I keep mixing it up.
Because fibula is a word, and that makes me want. I wanted to say it, but that's not how it's pronounced. It's okay. It's not fibula. It's Pribula.
Missouri, previously Penn State, played a bit this year, got hurt. David, Missouri, you know this. What do you think?
I think he's a really good player. He was a huge part of Missouri's offense early on and helping them establish a running game and soften things up a little bit for Ahmad Hardy. Missouri's a pretty good situation, so we'll see kind of what the market is for him. The injuries that he suffered, I think, played a factor in some of this, and we'll see. I think he's a guy that there's probably a little bit of risk inherently in leaving Missouri and hoping that you find a better situation, but we'll see. And I think one thing I've learned on this show, Chris, is that chairs should not be made out of skis because this is one of the most uncomfortable chairs I've ever sat in.
Yeah, we've had you here for almost an hour and a half. I know you got a board soon, but we'll go through the rest of this episode pretty quickly. We're going to get into now a couple of bowl previews.
This is for all the Tostitos.
On Monday, we've got the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, Washington State versus Utah State. 2:00 Eastern, ESPN. Utah State a 1.5-point favorite. David, what is famous Idaho potato?
These are like the potato people. They like. I'm familiar with this because they advocate for the potato farms, right? This is I think it's owned by the state, if I'm not mistaken.
It's the Idaho Potato Commission, which is a marketing board that represents the potato growers of Idaho. It's not a specific company. It's kind of a promoting all of them. I love it. You dump the French fries on the coach. I believe they do in this game. I hope they still do that. That'd be awesome. This, by the way, will be a conference game next year. This will be a Pac-12 game with that conference realignment. For Washington State, they've got no head coach because Jimmy Rogers is out. Their numbers are okay this year. They were better in the second half of the season. Eckhouse, the quarterback, has been a bit better. Utah State.
I like him. He's good.
Utah State, Bryson Barnes, remember him? He was the pig farmer, right? Was he the pig farmer?
Yeah. Yes, he's pig farmer.
He had a big year. Over 3,400 total yards, 27 total touchdowns. Utah State, 1.5-point favorite. I'm going to go with Utah State.
I'm going to go Washington State here. I think you can get Eckhouse running around, making some plays. I'll go with them.
My thing is like I'm going against the teams that have an interim head coach. That is basically my bowl pick strategy. And
It
there's
seems
quite
like
a
it's
few.
gone pretty well so far.
On Tuesday, we've got the Bush's Boca Raton Bowl. Toledo versus Louisville, 2:00 Eastern, ESPN. David, what is Bush's?
The Bean people, right?
Yes. Baked goods, but mostly known for baked beans. They produce 80% of the canned baked beans in the entire country. Feels like
Look
a
at you.
monopoly, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Can
we get Congress on that?
Did you know they are headquartered in Knoxville, Tennessee?
I feel like I should have known that. I did not know that.
You should have known that.
I should have known that.
The first 2,000 fans who bring Bush's baked beans to the game will get a free ticket to sit in the MV Bean section. Keegan Michael Key is involved apparently, so I don't know
if I want to smell that section, to be honest.
I don't know if we're dumping baked beans on the coach or what, but
they better be. I was told they weren't, but you can't stop someone if
they're leaning in. They're leaning
into
the baked beans of it all. So I hope we have some fun with this. For Louisville, Miller Moss is playing in the game. They're a 7-point favorite. Toledo interim head coach because Jason Candle's off to UConn. Good defense overall, but I'm going to take Louisville here because Toledo doesn't have its head coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think Louisville's pretty good. They seem to play really well against teams that got more talent than. I think Louisville gets it done here.
The also on Tuesday, the New Orleans Bowl, Western Kentucky versus Southern Miss, 5:30 Eastern, ESPN. David, what is New Orleans?
So it's one of the cultural centers of America. It's a very popular tourist city in Louisiana. I've actually had to go there a bunch recently. I did like 2 LSU games last year. I've covered the Sugar Bowl like 2 or 3 out of the last like 5 years randomly. So I've spent a lot of time in New Orleans. Big fan of the city. Always eat well when I go there. I had not had like New Orleans true barbecue shrimp until about 4 years ago. Incredible dish. If you go, Chris, you need to. It's like butter and garlic and Worcestershire sauce and like, sometimes you got to peel the shrimp and comes in like a big bowl, and then you got like the crostinis. Tremendous.
Okay, all right, that's all. That's way too much food preview for this game. But Western Kentucky 2.5-point favorite. They are just one of 8 teams apparently to reach a bowl game every year since 2019. Quarterback Rodney Tisdale Jr. He replaced Maverick McIver due to injuries. Has shown some upside a bit with Southern Miss. Blake Anderson is the interim head coach, but he's the full-time head coach. Charles Huff left for Memphis. Blake Anderson, the former head coach at Arkansas State and Utah State, he was the OC. He's promoted. They got the quarterback Braylon Braxton. Had a really good year coming from Marshall. As far as I could tell, there are not many opt-outs for this game, unless my notes are wrong. But the over/under on this game is 57.5, so I think we may have some points here. I'm gonna go Southern Miss. Because
I'm gonna go Western Kentucky
because they do have the coach who's already been there and will be there.
I'm gonna go Western Kentucky. I think they're a better team. I was a little surprised Tyson Helton didn't get many more sniffs in this carousel. I thought he might move up. I mean, they were pretty strong this year.
Yeah, not as you'd like to see some more Conference USA titles, I think, on that resume. He's always like solid, but
there's a lot of openings.
Yeah. Also on Tuesday, the Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl, UNLV versus Ohio, 9:00 Eastern, ESPN. David, what is Scooters Coffee?
So my wife does like Scooters. I believe it's a drive-through coffee place. Not a huge, if I'm not traveling, I'm not a huge get coffee guy. Like I'll make my coffee at my house. The $6 coffee, I don't get a ton of, but sometimes.
Yeah, American Drive-Thru Coffee House, founded and headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska. We actually one just opened up in my town here like a year ago. UNLV's 6.5-point favorite. They've got Anthony Calandria, the Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year. This is a team that puts up a lot of points and also gives up a lot of points, but they've been fun. Jaden Thomas, the running back, very good. Ohio, as mentioned, they will have an interim head coach in this game because Brian Smith was fired. Parker Navarro there. He of Timothy Chalamet fame is still there. Had a good year, but maybe a couple too many interceptions. Ohio had a case to be in the MAC championship. Didn't happen. I'm going to go UNLV here, mostly because of, again, coaching stuff.
Yeah, not all coaching changes are the same. This one was messy. I'm going to go UNLV.
On Wednesday, we have the Sheraton Hawaii Bowl, Cal versus Hawaii, 8 o'clock Eastern, ESPN. That's right, folks. We got the Christmas Eve night Hawaii
Love
Bowl.
It's a good game, too.
That's how you want to do it. David, what is Sheraton?
So I would consider myself a Marriott authority. Sheraton might have the widest variance in quality. There's some really nice Sheratons out there. I've also stayed at some Sheratons where I was like, I'm never staying here ever again. So Marriott, can we get a little bit of consistency?
That is correct. An American international hotel chain owned by Marriott International. For Cal, this is a homecoming for interim head coach Nick Rolovich, as well as quarterback Jaren Tuisonga-Pulatele, who is from Hawaii.
Good attempt.
I'm still working on it. JKS. Hawaii, Timmy Chang, the head coach. We got two former Hawaii quarterbacks going up against each other in the Hawaii Bowl. Micah Alahado, the quarterback, announced he's coming back next year. They've got kicker Kansei Matsuzawa, who almost won the Groza Award. Awesome story. The kid from Japan who taught himself to kick and taught himself English on YouTube, went to a junior college in Ohio, makes his way to Hawaii. Awesome year this year. This is going to be a fun game. The over-under, I believe, is in the – I'm sorry, the UNLV Ohio over-under is 65.5, by the way. They expect a lot of points. This one is somewhere in the mid-50s, I believe. But this will be a fun game. Dave, who you got?
I am going to go with Hawaii at home. I think this is going to be really fun. But Cal has a habit of playing down to competition. Hawaii has been a lot better than people realize. Because people just don't watch them enough. So I'm going to go with the Rainbow Warriors, baby. I hope they bust out the rainbow jerseys also.
Yeah, I'm going to go Cal, and I know they had the coaching change, but they did beat SMU after the coaching change, and also Nick Rolovich is going to stay on the staff. He's from Hawaii. The quarterback's from Hawaii. I think he's motivated for all of them to have a big game on a homecoming. Before we get to something else, we forgot to go back to helmet stickers, by the way, for the biggest players from this past weekend. And my helmet sticker goes to 50 Cent. He motivated Oklahoma after his performance. They scored a touchdown right after that to get back in the game. It wasn't enough, but it was a good effort, given the limited amount of time the refs let him have.
So I got 21 questions about that selection. I am going to go with Mark Fletcher Jr. We mentioned him in the show. My biggest compliment to him is that he didn't kill someone on the sidelines, because I would be going insane in that game, because it was readily apparent to me and anybody else who watched it, he needs more carries. But 17 for 172 against the A&M's front in that kind of game, Miami's season is still going because of Mark Fletcher Jr. Shout out to him. Glad he's back healthy. Very fun to watch. It's like a big back. He runs kind of high, hard to tackle. I love watching him.
Awesome. Dave, we have Remember Some Guys left. Do you have time for your sports bar rant?
We got time.
You got
I can
time.
see my gate. So listen.
How far away are you from boarding right now at the moment, though? What time is your boarding?
10 minutes, but I can see my gate, and I'm in the second group, so we're good. Listen.
Go ahead. Oh, wait, well, hold on. I got to play. We got to jump into the heat check segment, so we'll do that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I staying in Portland, drove to Eugene Saturday morning, which West Coast time sports just terrible. But fortunately, I found a nice sports bar that opened at 9 a.m. This is a thing that you have to do on the West Coast. I think this is not a thing in Central Time or Eastern Time. These places don't open until like 11 at the earliest. Anyway, but you have to because sports start earlier. So I set up in there. You know, I got my computer out. I'm kind of doing some work.
Do you want to name the place?
No, I'm not going to name the place.
Okay.
For reasons that will become apparent soon. Anyway, it was pretty good food, pretty good atmosphere. Had the audio on, had giant TV. You know, there's only one game I really need to watch, so I wasn't that concerned about TV distribution or previous complaints. But I'm in there watching. It's late in the first quarter. See the kitchen, but like you can hear it. It's there. And the door is there's two front doors that are wide open to this restaurant. Now, it's not super windy, but it's like 40 degrees outside, and the restaurant is like freezing. So I asked our waitress, "Hey, can we shut the door? Or can somebody shut that door?" She's like, "Oh yeah, definitely." So they go and shut the door. I was like, maybe something's wrong with the door, or the wind caught it, and I didn't know. So I'm like, okay, it returns to normal temperature pretty quick. 10 minutes later, both doors are wide open again. It's freezing in this restaurant. And so I don't want to bother the waitress, but I go and like try to shut the door and it won't shut. I couldn't figure out how to get it shut. So I'm like, well, whatever. Then it's just like, it's like cold to the point where it's like really unpleasant to like be in there. So then I ask the waitress, like, "Hey, I'm sorry, can somebody shut the door?" She's like, "Actually, no, the kitchen is really hot and the chefs want it open." And so I'm like, on a human level, I respect that. But from a business perspective, this seems like an insane, there should be a back door, or your AC should work better in your kitchen. I don't think the answer is to freeze out your dining room here. But, I'm kind of hoping that maybe something changes. And in this process, I'm not alone. I mean, this place is pretty packed at this point. Not to the point where it was getting warmer, but just every table was full because it was very close to campus. And a Cold War begins to form, literally, because 2 separate occasions, patrons were shutting the door, and a waitress would very slowly, kind of slyly open it back up. It's freezing in there. Am I insane? Am I grossly insensitive to the needs of my fellow humans to suggest that when it's 40 degrees outside and I go into an indoor restaurant, that there is a reasonable expectation that the temperature in the restaurant is not brought down by the frigid air from outside?
I think you are correct to be very frustrated by this. I don't know why anybody.
It was so cold.
You wouldn't want to be in there and eat food and do stuff. You are indoors for a reason. I will say, though,
that's what I'm saying.
Anybody who's listening from the Pacific Northwest, please email bunchformationpod@gmail.com with your thoughts. My understanding is a lot of places in the Pacific Northwest, Oregon and Washington, don't have AC because it's usually not cold enough or hot enough that it's not something that's there in. You don't have it there. So maybe the restaurant doesn't have it. And
the building seemed pretty new. I don't know. The idea of building a building, in the last 20 years and not installing HVAC seems suspect to me.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you one by the other. Well, but I will say no, because when they door, it got like a normal temperature. It was not hot in there I'm sure it was hot for the chefs. If you're, doing your thing, in the back, I'm sure it was hot for them. But I feel like that's a restaurant problem that they're hoisting onto their customers.
Was this place like packed, or was it a couple
Not
people?
Packed. It was just like the tables were full. It wasn't like you couldn't move in there and like, there's people standing up. It was just like all the tables were full. There weren't people sitting there waiting around. It's still pretty early in the morning.
I would say, like, I wonder if people were used to it, but the fact that people themselves went to close the door would tell me no, that they're not. So, all right, some we should do. I guess you don't want to name the place, but we want to start, I think, grading our sports bar experiences on the show. So we'll adjust this as it goes on, but 1 out of 10. There's various factors to it, but give me a score on your experience at this bar, and you have to take into account the service and the door situation. That impacts the grade, because this is when you were in. So we're not setting these up.
For what I needed, it was probably like a 3 or 4 out of 10. The food was pretty average. I only needed 1 screen, so I wasn't concerned about the screens, but there were only like 5 TVs in this place. So I have had some really good sports bar experiences. I forgot the name of the place in South Bend. I think it was like the Garage or Manny's or something. That was like a 8 or 9 out of 10. Really good food, great TV distribution. And then when I was back in Knoxville, not a sports bar, but I lived there, so I knew what was going on. The Aubrey's Bar, fantastic place. Aubrey's is like kind of a nice restaurant, but they have like a bar area that has some like tables, and really good screen distribution and really good food. So,
that's the place that couldn't figure out how to put ESPN on the screen, right?
No, that is not. That was a different place that was in Chapel Hill.
Okay. Well, there's our first edition of the sports grades. There's that sports bar opening up in my town. I'm going to need to check out at some point. We will grade it on the show. Kind of like whatever you think of Dave Portnoy, the pizza slice grading thing, it totally works. My dad watches it and he doesn't consume anything Barstool. So we're going to start doing this. We're going to start grading sports bars here. And we're not going to give them, we're like the health department. There's no heads up. There's no planning for us. It's what is it when you get there? And in this situation, David had to freeze his ass off. So 3 out of 10, 3 out of 10 for unnamed sports bar in Eugene, Oregon. Okay, before David gets on his flight here, we're going to end the show the way we always do, and that is by remembering some guys.
It's better than this. Guys being dudes.
I'm going to go with Nick Sheraton, former Michigan coach from 2006 to 2009. I remember him because he beat Minnesota in 2008, that Michigan first year under Rich Rod when they were really bad. Didn't have a quarterback who could run the read option. And my roommate at Michigan State, he had grown up a Michigan fan, and he bet a bunch of money on Minnesota to win that game because Nick Sheraton was starting. And Minnesota ends up winning. Nick Sheraton and Michigan end up winning that game. He is now the co-offensive coordinator at Alabama. I actually saw him on the field after the game on Friday, but he is leaving. He is leaving to become the offensive coordinator at Michigan State, my alma mater. So he's going back to the Great Lakes State. I'm not totally sure how I feel about him as an OC, but we'll see. That's my guy, Nick Sheraton. David.
I am going to go in the spirit of Oregon. First of all, love Portland, love Eugene. It's a unique place, carved out, just in the Cascades. Just if you've ever been, if your team goes, you should go. But in honor of them, wanted to remember an Oregon guy, Jeff Mayo, Oregon receiver. As a senior, he had a 1,000-yard season, 12 touchdowns. It helped Oregon get to the national championship where they memorably – that Auburn-Oregon championship game was awesome. Remember the
no, it wasn't.
Michael Dyer.
Mike Dyer. That was not a good – we thought it was going to be a super high-scoring game, and then it wasn't. It's kind of
but it ended. The ending was great. I'll say that. But we had the Michael Dyer role. Anyway, they got to the national championship game.
You can't honor an Oregon player here and then bring up that play in that game.
I'm sorry. Well, excuse me. Anyway, he had an 81-yard catch in that title game, the longest in championship game history. Just like a kind of a tall, lanky receiver. Enjoyed watching him. Better at catching deep balls than you might think, and that was a fun team. So shout out to Jeff Mayo. We remember you.
And we got a nomination from listener Tyler Ripperger. Hey guys, enjoying the show a lot. Since I found mid-season y'all had started a new one, wanted to throw in a nom for the segment. Felix Jones, Arkansas running back, 2005 to 2007. The amazing Robin to McFadden's Batman on those Run DMC Hogs. Felix was an All-American in his own right and had a respectable NFL career after being drafted by the Cowboys. Thanks so much, and go Cornhuskers. Shout out David for always talking up Lincoln. Now, David, you're the Arkansan here. Felix Jones, what do you think?
Love Felix Jones, great player. Are you aware that he looks alarmingly like Dave Chappelle, like to a creepy level?
I'm looking at this picture of him and the Cowboys, and at least not at this point in 2012.
Maybe not at this point, but
in college.
He does look a lot. He does look a lot like Dave Chappelle. Anyway, great player. Those teams were really, really fun. Matt Jones, obviously Darren McFadden. Matt Jones was earlier, excuse me. But you had the Casey Dick team, that weird Mitch Mustaine year with Gus Malzahn. But yeah, Peyton Hillis. Peyton Hillis had quite a life. Goes to the NFL, kind of nobody really cared about him.
Why are we talking about Peyton Hillis? What are you talking about?
He was in the backfield with that whole. You just keep
adding guys to this segment. He should be his own.
Well, but
thing.
It's a good story. It's a good story actually. So he gets on the cover of Madden.
You have a flight to get, David. You have a flight to get to in like 2
actually,
minutes.
It got delayed 9 minutes, so we got time. No, anyway, a couple years ago, his kids were drowning in the ocean, and he swam out there, saved them, almost died. Had to go to the hospital, had a whole recovery. Anyway, lived a lot of life. But that whole backfield, you can't really single out one guy in that group. McFadden, Jones, and Hillis were kind of all together. So you can't remember one without remembering everybody.
Felix Jones,
Marcus, good receiver on that team.
Felix Jones, earlier this year, inducted to the Tulsa Hall of Fame, where he's from. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So Felix Jones Jeff Mail, Nick Sheridan. We remember you. We will have a mailbag episode middle of the week, Wednesday or Christmas Day on Thursday. Email bunchformationpod@gmail.com. We'll be back also next Monday with the big quarterfinal preview. That'll be a lot of fun. Long episode, David. Thank you for being here and sitting on that very uncomfortable ski chair in the Denver
Please
airport.
stop making chairs out of fiberglass. Not something people need to be doing.
Thank you, everybody who's made it all the way through. This might be the longest show we've done now at this point, but there was so much to get to. I wanted to go deep on the playoff. Thank you, Denver Airport Wi-Fi, for working out. David, go.
I didn't get great because we had to recover. We had to record this show, so you're welcome, audience.
David, go catch your flight. For David Ubben, I'm Chris Vannini. Thank you for listening and watching Bunch Formation, and we will talk to you right around Christmas.
And bring back the turnover chain. It's somewhere. It's not in the Denver airport, but it's around here somewhere.